Right. Well, good morning and welcome to our second live event. Actually, I guess this would be the third live event, but the second option offer, if that makes sense. Okay. So we have done this twice already. We had two number one live events in June, and now here we are in July, coming into week 8 of this course, and we are having event number 2. And again, we have multiple options for this. So we have this morning, 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time, as well as again this evening, we're doing another half an hour at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time. So if you're able to join at that time as well, that is fantastic. Okay, so let's just kind of run through what it is that I had planned for this morning. So just kind of a reminder, this is something that went over in the first live event, and that is just a little bit about me. So if you need to reach out to me, I know that actually I think everybody has been fantastic reaching out in the text 602-529-6002, as well as Canvas inbox messages. All great ways to get a hold of me. Okay, so just kind of running through the course specifically. Like I said, here we are closing in. The end of this course is middle of August, and we are July 30th already. Okay, so as we continue through this, again, just a reminder, here are the live events that we've had. Our last one will be this evening at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time. That's also 5:30 p.m. Pacific. Okay, so as we close into the end of the course, it's always important to remember, why are we doing this? It can get a little daunting, right? The practice gets a little bit harder, the test yourself gets a little bit harder, all those mind tap activities, and we're cruising into week 10, which is where we have, our final assessment. So what are things that you can carry with you? Again, always be sure to communicate. If there's a resource that I can provide you with, I'm absolutely happy to do that. I did just receive a Canvas inbox message last night, somebody asking for examples that they can use, and I am happy to send those off. Also, be sure to participate in the discussion forum. I love to offer grace whenever I can when it comes to due dates, but those discussion questions are something that those are only open for the week in which we have them, okay? So 10 points. A good percentage of your grade. Okay, don't miss out on those. To just go in there, drop in your main posts, and then go ahead and add feedback to your classmates. Something helpful. Questions are fantastic, right? Because then it gives people something to feed off of. You go in there, and I think cheerleading is important. You have, opportunities to tell people, what, great formatting. And I've seen some fantastic formatting or discussion questions. I'm a huge fan of bullet points. I feel like it makes it really clear and it doesn't get lost. When we do things in paragraph form, things kind of tend to run together. So if you're wanting people to really gain something from the content that you're pushing out there, how you format it's going to be really important. And that's going to serve you well in the future as well. When you're sending communications to physicians, when you're communicating with counterparts, again, being able to craft what is it that you're trying to say, what is it that you want from somebody else. So being really clear. Again, bullet points are a great option. Breaking things up, putting it maybe into smaller paragraphs, a lot of different ways that you can do that you can make things an easy read so that people can assimilate the information and then figure out what is it that you want them to do next steps. And again, always helpful to your classmates, ask a question, give somebody something to answer, and there they have their reply as well. Okay, and of course, committing. I think this is where, we're coming into the end of the course. I don't know about you guys. I'm getting kids ready to go back to school. It's a busy time. And it seems to always coincide, just life kicks up in terms of speed and priorities and whatnot, but we have to see this through. So being committed to it, and again, set a realistic goal for yourself. Don't put yourself in a position to have to do a whole bunch at the end, but also give yourself space and then stay true to your plan as much as you can. Understanding, of course, that life often gets in the way. Okay, so on to this next one. Let me go ahead here. So what is it that we have kind of closing us out for this course? Well, we have some in-class activities and whatnot, and those really just comprise of what are we doing in our module. So when you go to the module section within the course hub, what are you seeing? Those are the types of things. So these are just snippets from our syllabus. But looking at primarily, we're going to be looking at, again, more coding, practice, test yourself. But also, we're going to talk a little bit more about operative reports, medical terminology. Even week 10's discussion question comes up with medical terminology. How important is it to know that stuff? Okay, so continuing on through, let's kind of look at this first part, operative reports. Right, so how do you make your way through an operative report? I know that we have introductions to this as we're working on surgery coding. You know, it's not always the same thing. You can have scenarios provided to you when you're doing practice, right? But it's very different when you're relying on physicians and their operative reports. There are standard templates that are utilized in most op reports. Now, it could vary if you go into a physician's office and that physician's office is you know, maybe very small and the physician has kind of the way that they do things. But this right here that I have on the screen that may be a little bit small to see is more of a traditional template. And the traditional template is going to call out, like, here's the headers, here's the key things, right? So we have, you know, the pre-op diagnosis, the post-op diagnosis, you know, what is it that we're doing? Who is the surgeon, the assistant surgeon? Those types of things, those are all going to be in the heading. So when you're going through an op report, it's always important to start out with the header of the report because you're going to kind of get, I don't know, maybe almost look at it as the executive summary, right? So what is it that they intended to do? What is it that they ended up doing? Those types of things, because expectations can vary. They can go into surgery looking for something, and it can kind of change direction based on what they find. Okay, and as well as they'll have that information in there too. And then, of course, the detail. So starting out, you look at the header of the report and you're like, okay, so, you know, maybe we're looking at an arthroscopy. Maybe we're looking at, you know, a gallbladder removal, whatever it might be. It kind of tells you where you're going to start out. So then you're going to head into the CPT code book, starting with the index. Okay, you're going to, once you, okay, I'm in my starting place, right? Now let's go to the content of this op report. What's in this op report? Well, there's a lot of things that can be in the op report. Okay, we're going to find that there is the detail as to what they did. There's the type of stitching that they use. There is their access points. There is, you know, any sort of things that they find, anything that may make it more complicated. You're looking at all that and you're reviewing the documentation. Because truly, even if you have a doctor that may have like their MO, right, how they normally proceed through any sort of procedure, it has to be documented. You can't code to what you know they do. You have to code to what they documented. Okay, so very important, review that. And you can start going through and deciding, okay, wait, where are we? Okay, I'm making my preliminary code selections. This is, you know, where I think that this is headed. This is what I want to look at. Okay, well, beyond that, now you're going to look at your guidelines, right? Because there's always going to be those things that kind of may change the direction that you're going in. Maybe if you were doing this type of procedure, you're going to go this way. If you are doing these two types of things within the procedure, you may code them separately. You may not code them separately. So you're going to look at the guidelines to give you kind of that next point. Also, you're going to review any policies, eliminate the extras. Largely, you know, it's very possible that the op report is going to give you information that you may not need. It's going to be kind of extra things. You could have maybe even guidelines from within your facility. Of course, those guidelines within your facility, within your physician office, should match coding guidelines, okay? And then you're going to, as you, again, making your way through the op report, gathering those clues from this investigation, which is largely what an op report is, you are then going to be adding any needed modifiers. I have included a link down here. This is just really the basics to 7 steps to correct surgical coding, right? But again, you've been working through this in your course. There is a ton of fantastic documentation on the internet, in the source of tutorials, in the source of blog entries. You know, today's YouTube, very helpful. Okay, so about the op report. Who, what, where, why, when? Well, why do we even do an op report? There's actually regulations behind it. Joint Commission, CMS, they all have opinions on and I guess it's not opinions, that's not a strong enough word. They have requirements as to how op reports should be set up. They have things that should absolutely be included in an operative report. So it is going to be your regulatory bodies. It's also going to be your professional associations. These are guiding the things that go into the op report and how it's put together. So who is putting this together? Well, it's going to be your attending. It's going to be maybe your assistant surgeon. So it's going to be those that were in the room. So the primary surgeon, the assistant surgeon, if you had residents, if you had any students in there, they may do this as well, but theirs is not going to be the end all, right? The reality is that anybody that's actually doing the surgery, again, the primary and the assisting, will need to do their components. And again, if you have Sometimes you'll have multiple surgeons. If you have a very complex procedure and you have maybe you know, an oncologist in there, and then now you need to call in and you're going to have, you know, maybe you have your GYN surgeon, you have your generalist, you're going to have a lot of different people potentially in a very complicated surgery. All of those individuals will need to do their own op report. And a lot of times within the op report, they will refer to, I then hand it off to Dr. Bruzy or whoever it might be. Okay, so where do they document? Well, they can do it via a lot of different means. They can dictate, they can use Dragon, they can free text type. Probably that last one is a little bit of the less frequent, and then very rarely you will see it handwritten, especially in today's age. Most facilities will require that it is placed into the record electronically and not by method of scanning. Okay, so again, I think I touched on the why, again, there's regulations, and then when. Those again are regulated. When do they have to do the op report? Well, Joint Commission says it's going to be delinquent in a certain time frame. A facility can pick a time frame tighter than that. So where I work right now, we say that an op report is delinquent after 24 hours. So very tight. But again, life has changed significantly. You know, 15 years ago when everybody was paper-based and we're doing everything on a discharge basis, we had to wait for the patient to discharge for the record to be available for the surgeon to really do their op reports or for us to even know that they hadn't done them. Okay, so it has kind of changed over time, but again, regulated, heavily regulated. So what if the op report is not enough? What if you are going through your coding and you find that the operative report is not giving you what you need to do the level of specificity that you need to finish your coding? That is an opportunity for query. So when you're querying the physician, again, rather regulated, we're going to be looking at, you know, what types of things should be included in that query. I'm very careful that as a coder, you're not driving the physician towards a specific code, right? And the reason for that is it could be an opportunity to influence a provider inappropriately. So what you're wanting is for them to give the accurate description of what occurred, and sometimes more accurate, right? So they didn't give you enough detail to get all the way. Maybe they didn't give you something as basic as maybe the centimeters or something. Maybe they didn't give you the length of something, or they didn't give you sufficient detail on their entry point, anything like that. It could also be that maybe they were unclear on, was this done this time? Was this done before? Was this a result of something else? It could impact your diagnosis coding, could impact your CPT coding. So what are you going to do with that? Well, you're going to query the physician, and that's where you put together something, and there are great examples, again, on a HEMA, on the internet. Your facility, however, should have one as well. And again, very basic is say, okay, this section where you said this and this, can you please clarify what was the length of this? Or did the patient have this in a previous, you know, surgery, or subsequently, what type of you know, just really any sort of specificity, okay? So you're asking them, you're saying, I saw this in this place, or I saw, you know, maybe they were on this medication, could this have impacted this? Whatever it might be, you're telling them what it is that you're looking at, and then the exact question that you have. Okay, but again, not driving them to a code. Okay, so that's making your way through an operative report. And in this evening's 30-minute session, I'm going to kind of review the first part again, but then also run through a little bit about peeking over into medical terminology, because this comes up in week 10's discussion. So we're going to discuss it today. All right, I hope you have a fantastic day. Hope to see you this evening, or if not, please send me a message. Let me know, how did you feel about this particular live event and what maybe we could do to serve you better in the future. All right, have a great day.